Okay. Hi, everyone. Okay, it's a live stream. Yes, we're live stream. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 41st episode of Cruel Justice. My name is Herman Lindsey. I'm Florida's Death Row Exoneree and the Secretary of Water Witness to Innocent. For those that don't know what Witness to Innocent is, we are an organization mainly built of death row exonerees around the United States, where our mission is to go around and abolish the death penalty. Our show is to go around and educate people of this miscarriage that involved the death penalty, not only just the wrongful convictions, but the main issues that is so damaging that shows that we shouldn't have a death penalty here in the United States. And one of the hopes is not only that we educate people that are potential jurors to understand that their decisions when dealing with a death penalty case or any case is very, very vital that they pay attention to the evidence and question what they feel they need to question. Also, we hope to reach legislators and all other people that views this show, to get them to call upon action, call upon action to help us get rid of this mechanism called the death penalty. Today, our subject is, which a couple of weeks back, I had a show, and it was like the most amazing show where I learned about the problems that women on death row have. I never, me going through trial and me going through death row and being exonerated, I had a tunnel vision of how it was for me. And I suspected it was like that with everyone. But then when I find out how the women are treated so much differently, and it's like back in the early years of society being brought together. I mean, the 1800s, way back, civilization, how uh, people perceive women to be a certain way. Changes have came about. Before it was like a woman had to always wear a dress, and I didn't think that America had those type of codes. I know when you go across seas, the Muslim women have to have certain coverage, but I didn't know America had that. And when I found that those type of things play a part in the trials over here with women, where they are perceived to have to be a certain way in society, and it scrutinized them, and it also blinds the jury to see the evidence that's against them, or to evaluate the case in a fair way, because they jump to a prejudice mark because she wore, excuse my language, thongs as underwears, that she is not appropriate woman. And me personally, I know I would love to see my wife in thongs sometimes, and that's appropriate. If she's trying to be sexy for her husband or whatever, but to judge a woman by the underwear she wears, or judge the woman and say she's an unfit mother or this and that, and don't even look at the evidence. And here today we have Sabrina Butler, who is the first lady, and this is a thing about Sabrina case. They looked at, to me, from reading her case, they looked at her that she was an unfit mother. To They didn't pay attention to the evidence, where the evidence was being manipulated to say that she committed the crime she committed. And you know it's just sad to see that we are people of society actually think like that. And then we have Ms. Natalie Greenfield, who's from the Cornell Center of the Death Penalty worldwide. It's kind of analyst, because she deal with these cases of so many different cases with women on death row. And some of the things that she sees, man, it, it's like women are being uh, how can I say it? They're being very prejudiced against women and classifying them just because some of the things that they be as being a natural woman. And I didn't think we had that here in the United States. So we had to put this show together. So first, I'm gonna let Sabrina introduce herself and tell you a little bit about her.
Yes, thank you, Herman. My name is Sabrina Butler-Smith, and I'm the first woman to be exonerated in the United States from death row. My case was in Mississippi. I was convicted and sentenced to death March the 13th, 1990. My death date was July the 2nd. I spent 6.5 years altogether, 2.5 years on death row. I was exonerated in 95, and I currently now work with Witness to Innocence, death row exonerees, speaking around the world against the death penalty and things that we could change as far as the justice system is concerned.
I just have one question for you, Sabrina. What was the cause of your exoneration?
The cause of my exoneration was that my son, I didn't kill my child. He had heart, lung, kidney problems, and chronic bowel syndrome. And it was already there. They knew my son was sick. They just held the evidence in order, to get a conviction.
And one of the things was the medical examiner reports was wrong, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so despite that, we had an expert speaking. Do you believe because you was a woman and that it was your child involved, do you believe that played a big part of being prejudiced against and could affect the verdict of the jury?
I do think so because they called me a monster, an unfit mother. I was living in poor situations, and they knew that this kind of stuff would happen. And just all kind of labels was put, on upon me without really just looking at the evidence. The lawyers just didn't do their jobs as to, what happened to my son, and the district attorney just was able to get away with everything.
So my next guest, she's looking very beautiful with her curly hair. Also, I feel kind of bad. Both women got curly hair, and I feel like but they both are beautiful. My next guest is Ms. Natalie Greenfield. Can you tell the people a little bit about yourself and how you were involved in this with the women on death penalty?
Thank you, Herman. And thanks for having me on your show tonight. It's a real privilege to be here with Sabrina. I work at the Cornell Center on the death penalty worldwide, and we focus on the cases of women. We've launched a big project that's really looking at women's cases because our research and the clients with whom we're working are really pointing to the fact that although women are a minority on death row in the United States and around the world, there are actually very gendered reasons for which women are sentenced to death. What we're seeing is that women are typically sentenced to death for being bad women. So for being bad mothers. I mean, Sabrina's told us about her case, and tragically, that's not rare. And we see juries fairly commonly sentencing women to death for the deaths of their own children, and prosecutors bringing in evidence about how these women are monsters and dreadful mothers, because we have this view of women in society that your number one role is to be a mother and to be a good mother. So a lot of the research we were doing was showing that women are sentenced for these gendered reasons. And that's led us to really try and pursue what is going on here, and the Centre now represents and consults on a number of cases around the country and around the world of women who are facing the death penalty.
So, I'm not an attorney. I do a lot of educational things, I'm working toward litigation work. Are women cases when dealing with such thoughts and I mean, it doesn't quite fit up under prosecutor misconduct presenting this stuff, because it's up to the jury to decide. But then here, most people in society, um, you know, it, a man probably on the jury might don't have so much prejudice against um, the type of underwear she wear, her dress code, but a woman may. So, how difficult or challenged it is to get over this hurdle of such prejudice in these cases?
It's a really good question. And I think something that really compounds how difficult it is and everything you've just been saying, Herman, is the media coverage. I mean, we could spend all night talking about media coverage of women's cases, but because women are less commonly involved in homicide trials and facing the death penalty, the media really tends to, journalists can go all in on women and can really, really demonize women. We've had clients talk to us about how they were slandered all over the press for what they were accused of doing. One of our clients in Oklahoma, her case got more coverage in the press, all about her mothering and what she was wearing and her supposed boyfriends. And she got more coverage than the Oklahoma City bombings, which is really quite scandalous. And so jurors are coming into these cases with this background of media coverage that they've been exposed to, and then there's a common narrative that's coming through from the prosecution, and all of it really compounds to draw on these stereotypes and to really ask the question: are these women being sentenced because they're stereotypically bad women? And is that the standard we really want to be applying here in this incredibly unjust system? And then you add to that the fact that a lot of women on death row, overwhelmingly have experienced a lot of trauma in their lives. And so that's, either not brought in at all, or it might affect how they're presenting. And so all of this comes together to add to the story of how this woman is a bad woman, is a transgressive woman. And jurors are convicting based and sentencing based on this information.
I want to touch on that trauma stuff because I believe that plays a big part. But I want to go to Sabrina for a second. You spoke about how they try to dehumanize a woman during the process of trial. Sabrina, if I may ask you, how did that apply to you during the course of going to trial?
Well, one thing in particular, they look at how you cry. If you're not crying enough, if you're not looking a certain way, then you must have did it. If you know what I'm saying? Me going through trial, I was only 17. So I just had a stoic look on my face because I didn't know what to, I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I didn't really understand. So therefore I just, I was scared inside. But I tried to hold up and show that, hey, I'm not scared. That's what most of us do. And so they took that as though, she looked this kind of way and she didn't have this. And she was angry and she was, you know what I'm saying? That, and they use a lot of that in media coverage against me. And that's why they made me like a monster, talked about me as if I was didn't care about my children and none of that. Wasn't a good mom, none of that, because of the way I looked.
Was it the treatment towards you? Would you say the treatment towards you going through this process of being incarcerated on death row and going back and forth to trial? Do you feel that was you was treated differently than what they would do with a man?
I think so, because like as far as going to jail and stuff like that, personal hygiene, they didn't care about that. You were on your own trying to get personal things from the jailers or anybody like that, like as far as sanitary napkins, things women need when incarcerated. We suffer more so than I think. I mean, I'm not saying men don't suffer, but I think it's harder for women because a lot of us come to prison with our, have children. Those children are just out there. You got to figure out where they're going, who's going to keep them. You go through a lot. So that's added trauma as a compare, as it's added trauma, and plus you're incarcerated. So I think it's much more harder for us. And then I think we're treated as second-class citizens. I don't think they look at us because the prison that I was in, they kind of let the guys took over and they just put us in buildings that was for the females, but they took the females out and put the men over there and put us in smaller cramped areas that were worse off. So yeah, we were treated a lot different. And as far as people, the way they were talking to me and all that, yeah, I was a baby killer. They called me child killer, baby killer, all kind of stuff. I heard it all. And I mean, that was humiliating and sad at the same time because I had lost my son and nobody cared. I'm just this guilty person. So that's the way it was, until I proved my innocence, which for all that's worth. But I'm just saying that's another chapter. But yeah.
And from my opinion, it's just my opinion from listening to you. I know as a man going through trial and things like that, majority of the guards are more afraid of us than they're afraid of the man because the crime that they're arrested for, and they feel like the person don't have nothing to lose, and do they want to take on it? It's like an intimidation thing, and then some do it, but they do it when make sure they lock the doors before they scrutinize you or try to dehumanize you. So I can kind of relate and understand what you're saying about how the guards treat you, because they don't just go up in the man's face majority of the time and talk trash. They wait before they lock behind the bars. As for a woman, they feel like you're weaker, or because you're crying, or it's bothering you, that they can what they call boo you up more, and I can sense that. But I want to go back to you, Natalie. One of the things, like I said, I wanted to touch on this trauma. Is like, for instance, Sabrina, for instance, she had trauma just by losing her child. And they didn't care about that because they felt like she was the one committed it. So they hardened the trauma. They pounded the trauma on her. Then you have other cases such as, and I always go to this case because this is what sparked me on this women thing, is that Lisa Montgomery case, who was executed, and how she was actually went to the police a couple of times about the abuse that she was going through, and about the raping she was going through. And and every time most of the time she went to the police, they took her right back to the same environment, or to the same person that was accused of doing it. But society is not looking at that. Society is not looking at the trauma that pushes a person, that pushes and slamming a person to the fact that they are so traumatized, and sometimes they're not. I know for me, I suffer. I don't know what the diagnosis would cause of it, but sometimes in life I be feeling so numb to I'm operating normally, but because of the trauma of what I've been through, I'm not grasping in everything in one. So I can imagine how the trauma of someone who's going through constant abuse and constant consistent raping and stuff like that, and go to help, and it's like they have nowhere to turn. And a lot of these women that's on death row suffer traumatically with trauma before they committed these crimes. Can you elaborate a little bit about that trauma and received on trial?
It's so important, Herman, what you're saying there. It's women who are serving extreme sentences, like death sentences, life sentences, overwhelmingly have experienced gender-based violence in their life. That is perhaps domestic violence, sexual abuse, physical abuse, abuse when they were children. And I'm glad you mentioned Lisa Montgomery's case, because it is a very clear example of how abuse at the hands usually of men can shape a woman's life and almost become a pipeline to the point where she might commit an offense. I know you primarily work with people who are innocent at witness to innocence, and a lot of our clients are not actually innocent in the sense that, you know, they might have some involvement in an offense. But what the system completely neglects to account for is the state's own complicity in how someone might get to the point where they are involved in a crime. Because, as you said, you know, if someone is experiencing abuse and has no protection from the state at all, and turns to, whether it's law enforcement officers, teachers, parents, anybody for help and doesn't receive that, that has a psychological impact on a person, and that can really affect how someone behaves, how they respond to others around them. A case that really comes to mind is that of Erica Shepard. Erica is on death row in Texas at the moment, and she repeatedly turned to people for help through a very, very traumatic childhood and adolescence. She went to 2 different shelters. She ran away from home multiple times and went to a homeless shelter once, and was turned right back to her home where she was suffering physical abuse. Later in her life, she went to a women's shelter because she was suffering domestic violence and was kicked out of that shelter. She was in hospital for pregnancies and also for trauma related to injuries that her husband was inflicting on her. And all of the time, the state actors were just turning her back into an abusive situation. And we've really got to ask ourselves, you know, at what point are we saying that, you know, where should the state be stepping in here, where women have a human right to be free from violence and are in need of protection, and where people are repeatedly being denied that right? At what point is society complicit in actions that may then later result? Speaking of Erica, I just, if you don't mind, want to read a quote from her. She wrote to us recently, and I think she really encapsulates this point that you've been making, Herman, about how people seek help and are continually turned away. So these are Erica's own words. She says, "Using capital punishment or incarceration as the sole response to violence fails to achieve justice because you're simply sending people, especially Black and brown people, into a system that has already failed them." And I think what she's saying there is really powerful.
And the thing about it is that who's actually at fault? You know, I understand the person that commits the crime is actually guilty for, most are guilty for, and we're talking about the ones that are guilty right here. We're talking about the ones that's guilty, right? The ones that are guilty, you know, they do commit the crime. Okay, we get this. They are guilty of that. But as a person that worked with mitigations and litigation and finding mitigation reasons to say, no, don't give this person death, you know, these things that actually we obtain where we have so much trauma from abuse, and sometimes it starts from childhood in the home. You know, people been raped by their men, been raped. You know, we're not just talking about women here. We talk about men being raped, and it's so much stuff that people been bullied so much, until the very things that society says they're stepping up for. We would not have bullying in school. A person that's raping, we don't tolerate this. But then when we get into the penalty phase, where we're asking for society to think about the trauma, what this person went through, why this person don't deserve death, it's like it's totally blind to it because of the crime they actually happened. And everybody know is, for instance, if you take a woman that is working, right? And I hate to put it this way, but a woman that is working, she has 4 young kids. She's trying to do work and they're driving her crazy, it's driving her crazy. At some point, she's gonna get up from her work and say, and put her foot down and say, hey, y'all sit down. Mommy's trying to do work, and try to put them to bed or whatever and go back to her work. And I'm using that as a point as the trauma keep pamming on you, and to a point where you pushed. So she had to push herself from her work to settle the kids, and sometimes it doesn't be so easy in that way as, you could talk so calm. Sometimes it be pushed in a way where it consists of abuse, applying abuse to someone else. And it's not right, but it's like what they say, pressure busts a pipe. And that's what trauma does. It just pushes a person over. And, my thing about this is, Natalie, is what message would you tell society dealing with the cases and mitigations reason? We don't want to say society failed them, because somewhere in society, they might have would have got help from somebody who really cared. But majority of government programs or majority of these other people that we run to, they just give money and not really caring. I mean, women are running from domestic violence all the time. But if you had the audience as the jury on a case right now, what would you tell them to get them to understand that this trauma is really serious and it need to be taken into consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that we really need to ask is, is the carceral system really the right place for somebody who is traumatized? You're speaking a lot about domestic violence there, Herman, and the effects that can have. People can develop post-traumatic stress disorder. People can develop all kinds of mental illnesses from repeated traumatic experiences. And is the best place for somebody really, is the best we can do as society to send somebody to a system that is incredibly cruel and dehumanizing and is not going to benefit anybody? Sabrina mentioned how, with her children, it was traumatic because she had to arrange childcare. We're taking somebody away from potentially their family and their children and not giving them the help that they need, when really society has failed this person and has failed to step up before to provide that person with the protection that they would need. So, it's really tough to try and change mentalities, especially when, to come back to something we were saying earlier, some of the stereotypes about women are so deeply rooted, especially with regard to motherhood and being chaste and those kind of things. But we've got to really keep pushing at it. And I really do believe that we can do so much better for people who are in abusive situations than sending them off to death row or to a prison to serve a life sentence. It's so unacceptable and compounds trauma. It was very interesting to hear Sabrina talking earlier about her experiences within the prison system. It would be great to hear more, I think, but it resonated a lot with some of what our clients have told us about the conditions that they have in prisons, which also compound trauma. People are facing sexual harassment from prison guards, for example. Prisons are entirely ill-equipped to serve women's needs. The prison system was designed by men with men in mind. And so, we've got women in Texan prisons that are incredibly hot, who are going through menopause, who, that's such a difficult situation that that people who menstruate have to face, and the sexual harassment, people who are having to show their breasts to get a cup of water when it's a really hot day, and it's all of this comes together to compound trauma and to do absolutely nothing to serve people's needs.
Sabrina, if you would just send a message to all the viewers, and all the viewers our juries, what would you ask them to consider a little bit more that they didn't consider in your trial?
First of all, women's rights. I mean, we've always had to fight to get what our point across. It's not about being barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? No rights at all. God dog. I mean, every woman doesn't want to be pregnant. I'm just here to tell you, we got strong women, independent women out here that have the right to do what they need to do at any point in time. My daughter's one of them. She doesn't want any kids. So what I'm saying is, look at me for the case, and that's what I would have wanted them to do. Look at me for the case and do the right thing. Don't just look at me and say, oh, I'm an unfit mother and all this kind of stuff because you got this over here. Do the you should have done the investigative work, because I should not have went to prison at all if you would have done, but they had their own way of doing things. And they looked at me like I was a crackhead, and I have never done drugs before in my life. But this case, I was a crackhead. I was a monster. I was this, I was that. That was crazy. I mean, women have rights too. Yes, we have hot flashes and all that, and it is important. Hot flashes kill you. they are horrible. And I mean, in prison, I saw the male guards, the K9 unit, they come down, they beat up the women. You should have women over women, not men over women. You know what I'm saying? That because I think that, women will appeal to other women as opposed to it being a strictly male situation. Now, I'm not bashing the males, so don't get on me. Don't come after me. I'm just saying we deserve rights too, man. We have rights too as women. We really do. And we shouldn't have to fight as hard as we are to have a place in this world. We shouldn't, but we do. And it's sad. It's like beating your chest. Oh, I'm the man. Oh, women go sit down. No, that ain't the way it should be. We got rights too.
I'm still bouncing about pregnancy.
Well, I mean, a lot back in the day, that's the way they thought. I'm serious. That's the way they thought it
Western days.
We could not talk. We couldn't say anything. If the husband, whatever he said, that's what went. I mean, he could go out and find 50 women. We had to stay at the house, barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen. That just lets you guys know how old I am.
We're not going to talk about age, but
no.
Question: was your judge a male or a female?
Male. It mostly was male all around me. Mostly was male.
And a lot of testosterone. And in Mississippi, you have a good old connection.
I had the good old boy system in place. Yes, in my trial, that's what it was.
Kangaroo court.
Good old boy. Yeah.
Okay, kangaroo court.
Kangaroo, that's right.
Well, we coming close to the end. I have a video I'm gonna play right quick. If Allison can go ahead and share the screen, but hopefully the visual, the audio part will work.
I'm here today because I believe that Julius Jones is innocent. I believe it down to the core of my heart, and I think it's important as a community that we come out and show up for him.
This is amazing, and it's just amazing that everybody came together, no matter what background, just to do the right thing. I have a son just a couple years younger than Julius, and if something like this ever happened to him, I would hope and pray that other people would get involved to help.
And we believe that God is a God of love, not hate. God is a God of life, not death. And what it means to love God and love our neighbors is to advocate for their lives and not their execution.
Okay, Melinda, will you please call the vote?
Kelly Doyle.
As I stated last month, I continue to believe that there is doubt in this case in which the ultimate punishment should not be utilized. So I'm yes for clemency.
And at this point, I am convinced that he is deserving of that, and my vote is yes for clemency.
For the reasons previously stated at the commutation hearing, my vote is yes to recommend clemency.
So we need everyone to now turn attention to Governor Kevin Stitt. He is the one who has to make the final.
Did it freeze up? Allison, I think it froze up.
To please take the recommendation that the board has now given him twice. Take the recommendation of the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board.
To Governor Stitt, you know, I just pray that he's on the right side of history. There's a lot of eyes on this case, and he has the opportunity to give Julius a second lease on life, and so I pray that he does that.
Please don't let Oklahoma execute an innocent man named Julius Darius Jones, who is my brother.
You know, I just want to say this is two things for me. You know, it's a great progress here in Julius Jones' case. We're witnessing support, has been supporting Julius Jones' case, and I was recently out in Oklahoma in the Capitol. You know, it was amazing because the Capitol have an oil well right on the Capitol grounds. So it was an amazing experience. But what I want to also take out of this is that here, this is a prime example. You know, we talk about we want justice in our system, you know, and to get justice in our system, we as society has to pull together and get on the same level. We have to understand that trauma plays a big part of people that's committing crimes. We have to understand that we need to stop these people from suffering during this time of trauma. We have to help the women out there that is getting abused, taken advantage of, and let them know that it is people out there that care. We have to let them know that we as society is there to help try to protect her so she can live her life without having fear, where she can live her life, where getting the rehabilitation that she needs to overcome this trauma and stay in a productive life. Not having her feel, you know, there's nowhere to turn, that she's in the land of free, and all that matters is, you know, money. And the reason I say money is because that's what pushes political things. That's what pushes our justice system. They make a lot of money off our justice system. And, you know, when we talk about domestic violence, when we talk about rape, when we talk about the slandering of a woman during her trial, where she should be able to sit comfortable because she is innocent until proven guilty. She is still innocent until proven guilty. But from the day one of her arrest, she has to take torture as if she's guilty off top, where people prejudging her by the crime, by the things that people say about her, and taking away her self-esteem to fight in the courtroom to be a productive person. And I think that today's show is a show that symbolizes that we fighting causes in the justice system. But I've been here speaking around the world for 10 years now, 10 years. I've had shows, I've been in front of legislators and everything. And majority of the time when we're talking about cases and how broken the justice system is, we're talking about witnesses, false witnessing, false confessions, police harassment, prosecutor conduct. But we never talked about those that's in society, that's in that system, that's badgering these women while they're going to trial. And that is an issue that is a real flaw in our justice system. I'm not an attorney. I'm a person that's been in that system. Sabrina is a person that's been in that system. Natalie is a person that has to work around that system and try to help get the best results for those that has suffered and no one came to their rescue. But the minute they've done wrong, here it is, they're getting beaten and punished in all types of methods, mentally, everything. Before I go, Natalie, Sabrina, I'm gonna go to Natalie first. Is there anything you would like to say before we come to the end of this show?
I would like to thank everybody for listening, because I think that's how we start to change minds, is by engaging people in conversation. And anyone who's on social media or who has access to social media, I would really encourage you to get involved. You know, we just saw the video about Julius Jones, and all of our thoughts are with him, but there's some really great activism going on online, and people are really trying to push the needle and move us towards a day where we no longer have this absolutely barbaric punishment in the United States. So I'd encourage people to check that out.
I enjoyed you on my show, and I need to get in contact with you to, you know, whatever I can assist with, we are what the Centers can assist with. We will proudly support your cause, and I'm sure we'll have another show of this, because this is something I want to hammer out, just like they hammer the women. I want to hammer this out so that it reaches as many people as possible. You know, a lot of people don't know what actually goes on in prison, or what goes on through the trial process of dealing with a case. They just look at what's on the news or what's on the television show, and we need to let them know from people that actually been involved how it really is. So Sabrina, before I leave, would you like to say anything?
I'd just like to say, piggyback off what Miss Natalie said. Yes, whenever you can, anywhere you can, just join us. I mean, just look at what's going on in the justice system. If any way you can speak out, any voice that you want to use, any platform, just, you know, speak out. And women have rights, like I said, and I think that we need to look at these cases, and we also need to look at them at the system as a whole and try to make a change. And that's basically what, you know, I'm here to do. Thank you for having me.
Miss Natalie, if it was, I know I said one question, but as I go to my thought process, is it, in what ways, is there any way that people in society right now can help you and your organization who's fighting hard for these women? Do you have, like, for instance, you have a website, you have information you can share? Can you tell us how?
Absolutely. If people want to go to our website, it is www.deathpenaltyworldwide.org. All of our social media links are on there. If you're on Instagram, you can check out @HerWholeTruth, where we're telling the stories of some of the women who are on the inside and trying to spread awareness about their lives and about the abuses that they've suffered and the conditions in which they now are forced to live. So if people want to help educate themselves and the people around them, then check out our website and check out our social media and spread the word.
And you know, I want people to understand, we here, I know, especially here at Witness Innocence, I know our staff will be very busy, and I have amazing staff, amazing ED, amazing board. I want y'all to understand, if y'all trying to learn this stuff, if anything we can help you with, you contact our organization, contact Miss Natalie organization, you know, and ask questions, because, you know, the education on this is very, very important, because guess what? You may be a potential juror. You may get with being educated, or you may have someone, you know, going through a case or something, and you will be able to identify some of this stuff that is seriously a problem just by educating yourself on it. Now, you know, it may never be used in hopefully it never be used where you have to be on a case and we have to defend you, but you know, it's good to be educated instead of waiting for it to hit you at your back door before you try to learn and understand about it. So with that being said, you know, I went over my 30 minutes. Luckily, I don't get fined for doing that, but I want to thank everybody for joining us this week at Cruel Justice, and I ask that everyone that sees this video, please share it. Please share it. The more you share it, it is some information in this video that will allow someone to grasp what they didn't know, you know, or what they needed to know. And if we can reach one person every share, guess what? It's spreading. It's spreading, and that's helping us get the justice system and society on one page to understand that we want justice. Justice. Thank you. From Cruel Justice.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.